let's get started with the topic right away. Today's theme is fostering public private partnerships for biomedical translation and implementation in India, lessons from the previous decade. What I propose is that we will first give a few opening comments to just set the stage, following which I'll request each of you to share some of your learnings, building some of the PPPs in your own institutions or domains that you have been active in. And then following that, we can have a round of discussions which will focus a little bit on different aspects of fostering PPPs, especially in biomedical translation. And then, we can open the floor to questions if time permits. I see that we have about 1 hour total, so if possible, maybe we can help Satya catch up a little bit as well, right? Okay, so let's get started. First of all, when we talk about PPPs, let's try and understand what they mean. Of course, it's public-private partnerships, and you can define public in many different ways. One limited way of thinking about is the government, but there are other institutions which also sort of channel public funds like charities and so on and so forth. So they, in effect, represent the public at large. One other way of looking at it is that public institutions tend to focus on public and social goods, whereas private institutions tend to focus on private goods, especially those which can be monopolized or can be proprietary in some form or the other. But that sort of paints a very, picture which, as if it is Venus and Mars, but it's not. In practice, these partnerships are actually very important because, as all of you um, are aware, it's the fact that public has to leverage private and private has to leverage public is something which is sort of has been the experience all through, and that is why those partnerships are quite important. Academic and research institutions which are say working on various ideas and generating new knowledge and then applying them very often rely on the fact that the private sector is the backbone behind financing all the work that happens. Even what comes to the government comes essentially because some private sector had a profit somewhere to put that money back into either the government or charities. So, of course, public institutions should not forget that itself. And besides that, converting some of the fruits of research into products and services in the marketplace, and therefore reaching out to many more people, and therefore strengthening the research, the impact agenda of academic and research institutions is something which, again, private parties have to be involved as well. On the other hand, private parties cannot do much if they're not leveraging new knowledge that's being created in some of the public institutions, especially in innovation and translation. Also, there are public resources to be leveraged, like, for example, facilities, capabilities. Sometimes some of our institutions build capabilities over tens and 20, I mean, several decades. And that is not something which usually industry would do, but academia and research institutions can afford to build over a long period of time. And therefore, they create technology options for industry as well over a period of time, which you can see happening today. For example, I'm from NCL. We started some of our hydrogen energy work about 25 years back, right? Today we are talking about a hydrogen mission and so on and so forth. But it took that much time for it to reach somewhere where people would start working on some of these themes as well. So I think those partnerships are very important, and those partnerships take a lot of different forms. In the form of where you are collaborating, where you're doing co-development. They could be in consortia mode. They could be technology transfers. They could be PPP entities, JVs, and so on and so forth, which enable some of these activities. And of course, they could also have various aspects of um, uh, co-resourcing it, and that I think I'll let Tasleem take up of some of those models of co-resourcing some of these PPPs, and then open the move the floor to our panelists who can talk about some of their experiences in PPP.
Oh, no, thank you. Uh, Morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here, and I think have the opportunity at this BFI event to set up an interesting discussion with all panelists. Thank you all for joining. First of all, uh, I think the idea of the panel, as Premnath has rightly said, is to kind of build a dialogue for how together we all believe that there is more and more momentum shift happening on taking the knowledge which is getting generated and translating it towards building solutions which are important for not only local ears but eventually globally, and that is very important aspect of it. There is definitely, if you see the history for India, there's definitely a lot that India has done in terms of building those capabilities in different fields, different sectors, and many sectors have given dividends, not only economically, but dividends where we actually could uplift the society at large. And that's very important aspect. Health is absolutely at the center stage for society to actually become developed. And I think what we need to do is to build solutions which actually can address those. And who better than the scientific community to build that translation capability to add to the phenomenal uh, knowledge capability that we have to ensure those solutions are built. Now, idea is that what are the models that we actually would look into that? And that is where we are trying to build today's conversation. We all agree, possibly, and as you get a chance, my request to panelists would be to add on to that. We all agree there is a much need, there is a momentum, there is a lot of governments, central governments are coming in and putting together, philanthropics are coming in. What are the models that we actually plan to do? Of course, the traditional models have been, as Premnath mentioned, have been classical models of tech transfer, where one set of subsector capability center like academia produces knowledge, and the other center says, it's good, let me take it from here. But there has been a clear indication that this hasn't been a fully, I would say, answering model to the entire need that we have. That model is good and it works in certain circumstances, but in the phase like biomedical, where the risk is much larger than in other sectors, I think there is a need for people to say we need to build another capability, that is translation, which is before the productization and after the discovery. And that is very important aspect of it. And how do we do that? What are the models for that? Can we ask foundations to come in? Can we ask government to come in? Can we ask industry to come in and support that? And do we need certain structures, constant structures to do that? And that is something we want to discuss today and take your inputs in terms of where do you think it has worked for you, where do you think it hasn't worked for you, and where do you think if we can do it this way we can build it to the next level. So with that, if we can begin, Premnath, with one panelist at a time with your introductory remarks.
Is Vinay Nandikuri. I'm from CCMB Hyderabad. What we are talking about is public-private partnership. I think it worked out quite well, specifically during COVID time. When country needed it, there was a lot of private companies and institutions in EU funding agencies together have actually come together to solve that as the problem. That is the reason why our diagnostic cost went down from 3,000 rupees per test to something like 150 rupees per test. And we could come up with vaccine within about a year's time. CCMB actually worked with Bharat Biotech for a while on trying to develop the vaccine, but eventually they worked with ICMR, which is another public organization, and eventually coming up with their Covaxin, and that has components of IACT and various other things. So very, very clear indication and a very successful way where a vaccine was developed, DBT was funding it, then you have multiple scientific institutions contributing to it, and a private company ultimately making it. There cannot be a better example than Covaxin for us. And in addition to that, many companies were trying to produce many drugs. And all of these things were tested in places like CCMB to NCBS and many other places where these things were done, and done without really worrying about what's in it for us. And if you really want PPP model to work in the healthcare, and you want this to be something that can be done in a big way, because it's important. Without that, we really can't come up with newer drugs, newer interventions, newer vaccines. We need to have these technology transfers happening in a seamless way. Another example I can think of is mRNA vaccine. That is something that we are working on currently, and we are working through AICCCMB, Adult Incubation Center. But we were in conversations with many companies. Of course, there are problems in terms of indigenizing the whole thing. But it's something that is as a technology that needs to be developed between multiple organizations, both public and private, so that next time if there is any particular a pandemic or any epidemic or pandemic that comes our way, we know how to use this technology in an effective way. So there are multiple other facets that one can think of and talk about. But what is important is having the trust, having co-developing something from the start would be a good way to go about it. Another thing that I can think, again, COVID time, is that we were involved in nanobodies for neutralizing the COVID, and this was done with WINS. This was completely a CCMB WINS collaboration. Ultimately, COVID went away, and so that never saw the market. But that doesn't take away the fact that a company and a research organization could work together to actually develop a product. And this is something that we need to do it seriously, and the partnership should be from the start. I understand technology transfers can happen, but from the start, if something is there, it really adds momentum. And also, there is investment. People are seriously invested in the output, both both the companies as well as this thing. And that would be the way we can develop better products and better vaccines, better healthcare solutions. For now.
Um, you know the there are multiple things that you can, if you look at PPPs in technology development, you can imagine various combinations and permutations in which partnerships can be forged. There can be those where you're leveraging, say, academic capabilities which have been built. There are also those which could be leveraging certain specific facilities that you have created. There could be those where funds of different kinds are being exchanged or leveraged in different ways. So there are different combinations of PPPs that are possible. Very often, sometimes even things like industry knowledge and networks are important, which sometimes as academics we tend to sometimes lack those and are not able to bring to the table as much. And of course, people, the heart of it is a very different type of people who may be populating academic research institutions versus industry as well, and each of them bringing their strengths as well. So in CCMB's case, of course, would you say, I remember the case, for example, even you have had a lot of success in the past nurturing some of these organizations like Shanta Biotech, for example. Would you say, and I generally feel that there is an element of trust and respect that drives some of these partnerships. What do you think forged those kind of relationships? What made it possible? Is it just that those facilities were available, people were interested, or is it much more than that that enables some of these?
Trust is a very good starting point, and also open-minded thinking. Really speaking, institutes should. I know Shanta Biotech was incubated in CCMB. This was way back in 1990s, and that has ultimately led to such kind of, this was well before all the incubation centers and the way all of what you're leading has come up. And I believe to happen, it is ultimately individual in the sense that people who are heading these scientific organizations and people who are heading the various companies are starting out need to have that particular comfort zone and trust with each other. And that can be a starting point. That's not the only way. So networking is important. You need to really build certain level of trust between people. And then you really have to be open-minded, not worry too much about what's in it for me and look more at the larger public good. That can be a way to go forward. Another thing that I would have to emphasize is I really agree with all the things that you talked about. There are various ways to do these PPPs, and we should not be limiting ourselves to one way of doing. Even a technology transfer is in itself a PPP, because you have a technology, but the technology can be developed further by the private company, and then they should be getting the IP. So these kind of flexibilities are needed in the way we are actually doing doing things in terms of PPP models. So yeah, trust, ultimately one of them is open-minded way of looking at it, and realistically understanding that there has to be a proper I would say way forward that is defined at reasonably at the outset would be better.
Yeah. Let me move the question to Shilpi now. It's actually very interesting that some of these PPPs, just like other all kinds of technology translation, PPPs also enable, in a manner of speaking, a continuum in terms of financing, in terms of partnerships with institutions which might have complementary capabilities and so on and so forth. And BIRAC has done quite well in that space by enabling sort of a continuum of funding options, a lot of different partnerships with different entities, and so on and so forth. Do you want to speak about a little bit about what BIRAC has done and learned along the way for on fostering some of these PPPs in biomedical translation?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Premnath. I will, at the outset, start by congratulating BFI for the success of this first edition of Emerge. The entire team, kudos to the team. Thank you very much for having me here on this panel with such esteemed panelists being here. So, the point regarding the role of PPP and my experience of being associated with PPP right from very beginning, when it was like the BIRAC era, or the pilot BIRAC, when the BIPP was launched as the PPP scheme in the biotechnology sector, and we funded large companies. It had an annual allocation of 100 crores. So it was a large funding PPP scheme. And then moving on to entrepreneurship development, the early stage entrepreneurship development, and then the strategic partnerships. So one point which I would like to make, which is important for PPPs and the role of the first P, the public, in this PPP, is the flexibility and the de-risking, the initial de-risking phase which the government has to do. The heavy lifting in the initial phases. For example, the way we created this backbone of BioNest, bioincubation across the country, I call it similar to the digital public infrastructure. This is the biotech public infrastructure, which government through BIRAC has created, 100 of them, the nodal points across the country. So this is the role of government which nobody else could have taken up. So this is something, creating an infrastructure for that innovation to thrive, that we have done. Then the initial phases of the TRLs, where there is an initial early stage startups, the de-risking of that, the gestational risk, the scheme like BIG, which provides a complete grant in it, moving to the mature schemes like SIBRI, BIPP, where there is sharing of royalty or maybe co-development, co-investment. So it's like, just as you said, PPP has various forms. PPP moves from just co-funding, then to co-investment, co-development. And at the end, I feel that government has to shift its role from an enabler to an adopter. Once it reaches the TRL 8, TRL 9, we see a lot of startups who are facing this issue of adoption in the public system. So from an enabler to an adopter, all across is the role of government that I have seen. And then coming to the strategic partnerships, yes, whether it's national, whether it's global, BIRAC has forged a number of them, where we are also exploring with BFI and other international philanthropic organizations. So here, as Dr. Vijay mentioned, trust plays a very important role. Trust and openness here is the key element for any strategic partnership to take forward. And the point you mentioned, Dr. Premnath, regarding philanthropy sitting at the verge of at times public, at times private, I think that now is the time that this PPP is named as PPPP, public-private philanthropy partnerships. Philanthropy should get its bit of recognition, because at times it's seen as public, at times it's seen as private. But we have large philanthropies like the Gates, the Tatas, Wadhwani, so all now BFI. So it's like philanthropy is playing a very important role, and for biomedical innovations also, we do give its due recognition. We call it PPPP. So I'll rest here for now.
Sure, I think that's a good place to, I think, move to Shishendu, and I'll let Taslim
Thank
ask
you.
the question.
Thank you very much. No, I think just to take it from there, traditionally, you know, uh, Shendu, philanthropy is always seen as they're looking for impact. They're looking for a change. They want to come in at the places where they believe neither public, neither private, nor private have actually still completely taken over, and then there's still space to make a difference. And traditionally in India, many of those, compared to in the US, where many philanthropies actually were at the heart of driving research and innovation, in India, many philanthropies were still at the impact level, last mile level, and trying to get things immediately done because the challenges for them were there. There was, food security, poverty, hygiene, and philanthropies were attracted there because the need of the hour was possibly that steep at that time. But I think as the country moves forward, I think philanthropies are looking to actually come in and support the research aspect, innovation. Vadwani Innovation Foundation is one, but they have started a fantastic effort through the WIN, and the COEs have been set up. And of course, we are honored to be in that list, but would love to hear from you the larger concept and your thought because while you have been at Win before the Wadhwani, you have been at Bayrak. Before that, you have been at the larger effort of the Gates India Challenge Grand Challenge program as a MD. So, your thoughts on that? Where do you see this now being shaped up? It's much more constructed manner. What I wanted to come to is that can we have it a much more structured manner where a lot of us can come together so that our sum is more than the whole of it in a way. So please, if you can do that.
Thank you, Tasleem, and thank you, Primnath. First of all, I should thank BFI for this lovely initiative, 2.5 days initiative. And I think I was telling Satya, and it is when Satya writes to a mail or a WhatsApp, it is very difficult to turn it down. If you tell him some excuse, he will find a way that you can bypass that excuse and come here. So it is very difficult, and I thank Dr. Gaurav Singh, the founder of BFI, and everybody at BFI to organize this lovely event, which brings in all, I think, funders, innovators, researchers, policymakers, academics, startups together in one platform. Coming to your, statement, Tasleem, what the foundation is doing, and it is not a foundation's, but it is broad philanthropic mandate, I could say, is work with secondly, I think it is a good segue because the earlier session which Satya had planned was bridging the divide. He brought in all the clinicians together. Radha and Anant very aptly moderated it to see what the challenges they are facing. In bringing it literally innovations which can create impact and what are the challenges, and Dr. Vinay also mentioned that how that innovation can reach the unmet need or to the public at large. That is the whole innovation cycle which we move on. The pre-proof of concept, then the translational part, and then going to the field, validating it, and then creating a business plan and have an exit strategy to move into the market. So this entire innovation cycle has various elements, and everybody plays a critical role in that. If the academic research is not there, you can't have translation. If translation is not there, you can't have validation. And if validation is not there, you can't enter the market. And Byrak's model, which was created, was a great model. We were fortunate to be part of that system, and it's literally created that. And I think the vision of Dr. M.K. Bhan, who created Byrak, and subsequent MDs, starting from Dr. Surup, who managed it, have literally seen how innovation can be not only be within the academic premises, but startups, companies, mid-sized companies, and large-sized companies can take it forward. So that is the ecosystem coming to it. And if time permits, I will come back to Dr. Vinay's story about COVID as well, and how that innovation was replicated there. Coming back to the philanthropic approach, how we plan to work. is, academics should do the research well. So then how to translate? Academics may not have that experience to translate it or talk to industry to out-license that IP, or when to file an IT, when to which granting agency to go for to get a translational funding. So we at the Wadhwani Foundation, what we are trying to do, and we not only we want to create a network of philanthropy within the foundation and across the foundation systems in India, to see how we can literally the academics, which are the two concepts of farming and the innovation, plucking out the good innovations which can cross the valley of death. Mr. Ram Gopal Rao gave a very good, ecosystem explanation yesterday, where we are failing in the innovation line. So academics will allow the academics to file, farm innovations at a big level. Then to take those innovations to a level where they can cross the valley of death is the biggest challenge. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to create innovation hubs across the country in various thematic areas. And we plan by 2030 to create around 100 innovation hubs in various thematic areas. Now, these innovation hubs, which will be funded by the foundation and all the other like-minded foundation, we are welcoming them to join us, is these innovation hubs, we will give them funding to create a core capacity within that innovation hub with a hub director, hub program manager, hub program officer. They will be talking to the academic, and these innovation hubs will be based inside an academic setting. They will be based inside the academic setting, and they will work with the academics in day in and day out basis to look for nice innovations which are coming up, advise them when to file a patent, advise them to help write grant applications to get the translational funding from whichever funding agencies are available in the ecosystem, build the team, start talking to industry, or help the academic if they want to spin off into a startup, bring them together, do the translational part of it. Being working in the funding agency for almost now 2.5 decades, we have seen there is a 10% success rate as we go around the funding cycle. So if you can cross that valley of death and generate quite a good data on the translation ecosystem, either connect it to an industry or plan it on the way while you are doing that translational part to talk to the industry, so that when you are in that phase, the innovation literally gets an exit strategy or strong validation. Here, you will require a huge amount of funding. So we are talking to various funders who can join these hubs as well, to support innovations which are coming up from there. So this is the story, I think, which we are trying to build in the ecosystem. We fully understand that academics should do, because without that, uh, you know, whatever I tell when I do my grant writing workshops or grant clinics, in a innovation, in a 360-degree innovation which a funder looks at to fund it, 60% is strong science, 60 to 65%. Without strong science, you can't fund it. Remaining 30 to 35% is how you write your grant application. What is your IP strategy? What is your exit strategy? What is your regulatory pathways, if you have any? And then how you write your grant of this, how compelling story you tell. I always tell, winning a grant application is how compelling story you tell, and I equate that to a fairy tale. It should start with once upon a time and end with happily lived ever after. So I think what we are trying to do as the philanthropy, we can take risk, as you rightly said. We are working with the government, we are partnering with ANRF also to support with their work as well, to support. And what we are trying to say is literally handhold innovation from the academic setting in the bench, and de-risk that innovation into the translational pipeline to take it for a follow-on funding. New funders might joining to take it further. So this journey we are trying to help out, and various thematic area we will try to work within the ecosystem in India. Coming back, if you allow me one more minute, I think you have told me 6 minutes to speak, so I have 4.5 minutes done. What Dr. Vinay said, the COVID story, I think it is a great learning for all of us. And, in BioRact, we were part of the mission COVID Suraksha as well, which created 5 vaccines, created 50 clinical trial sites, 5 bioassay labs, 2 animal challenge facilities. Dr. Dash is here. He was one of the, created 1 animal challenge facility at ILS also. So, people look at only the vial which comes out at the end. But, creating these facilities were a big challenge, and the government did it. And in 11 months, we brought out a vaccine. So we released funds in 15 days. We've had review meetings in 7 days. I think, but that has to be done for innovation. Can't wait for 6 months, 8 months to get it funded or take it to the next level. So that is what is the acceleration part we will need to do it. And in the foundation, we have thought that 15 September onwards, we'll open our online application system 24 into 7, and we are planning a 45 days grant cycle to, if somebody applies, 45 days he'll come to know whether he has funded or not. So I think the accelerated funding, and that is what would be critical to it. Some of the things we need to work about, and holding academics to see where to go for funding, how to manage translational funding, and then taking help to take it forward. I'll stop here, exactly 6 minutes now, but I'll come back if you allow me.
Thank you, Dr. Shinto. Very quickly, I think, if I may add, I think what you rightly said. I think with this new, added effort in the philanthropies, like of course, like BFI, like Wadwani and others who are coming in, I think it adds completely a new dimension to support the translation. The reason being, it brings additional capability of taking risk deep down on center of excellences, and not necessarily have to spread it, because government has to spread it somehow because of the mandates they have, the agility that you can do, and possibly take accountability also in the way where it doesn't work, let's move on and do something else, which is very different than many otherwise would be do. At the same time, industry does take time to actually do a long-term strategy. It is a 10-year strategy. You have to go in. It takes years for them to come in and go from there. So that level of agility that philanthropies actually come in is very, very good. And you've actually, it could be a big risk takers going forward. According to me, philanthropy is actually going to be a risk capital, which people talk about. It's the biggest risk capital that we can actually leverage going forward, because that is where they are not looking for returns. They are not looking to, have a kind of a ensuring that everyone is covered, but rather going for the targeted effort and going back. So that is something that
Absolutely, you are right. We along with the government, we will plan to take. We are planning it. It will be risk taking,
Yeah.
and we'll have a mechanism of fund and follow.
correct.
If the project is not, we should be quite keen to stop it and move into different direction to support it. So I think, because medical devices, diagnostics, these are low hanging fruits. Everybody would like to fund it. So I think there you have a good turnaround time, and fund and follow mechanism works very well there. Thank you.
I think even Sandeep Nailwal yesterday talked about some of this, and especially about being able to, give people an opportunity to take risks, to look at some of these themes as well. I think we'll continue with the discussion.
Precisely. No, absolutely. And Dr. Shinra, I completely agree with you. I think Satya does pose a big challenge. I am one of the other culprit. I had some schedule issue, and from Germany he calls and saying that why are you not there? So I think kudos to Satya to making sure that many of us are here and be counted.
I told him, I
Yes,
think,
absolutely.
because we have,
Precisely.
because we planned it that we'll do it.
Thank you,
Today,
Satya,
that day we'll be here.
for that. Absolutely. Coming back, I think Dr. Shishendu talked about, Dr. Bansar, I'm coming to you. Dr. Shishendu talked about already the ANRF, and she was here yesterday. And ANRF is talk of the town, of course, for last year and a half too. And then you are adding a sibling, which is also talk of the town, that is RDI fund, right? And Dr. Abhay is, absolutely gung-ho about the impact that it can generate. So just wanted to get your perspective in, while the ANRF has a clearly play in terms of research component of it, and it's very clear. And where do you see ANRF as it has also an opportunity to bring co-funding, the 70 odd % co-funding thing? So where do you see, what are the models that ANRF is looking at, and how do stakeholders like us should actually work with you to ensure that we can arrive at those combined models? Over to you.
I think yesterday our CEO might have given a brief discussion, a brief overview about the ANRF, the current and the future roadmap of how we're going to do with the programs and schemes, which is going to cater for the community kind of things. Apart from that, as you know that as a statutory body, this ANRF is a landmark thing that has been created in 2023. that body, statutory body, which provides a strategic direction for research, innovation, and entrepreneurships. That is what the major point to be noted. So second thing here, it is ANRF, as you said, it is a 2.5 years. 2023 is almost 6 months back only. We are getting into the new programs, and we also restructuring some of the erstwhile SCRB programs.
Correct.
So the new programs, say for example, that Maha EV mission, that is a mission for advancing high impact research in electric vehicles. So there we made that program in a consortium mode, where we bringing in academics and R&D institutions, startups, MSCs, and also the industry setups. And in that we had some provision that 10% of, at least a minimum 10% of the investment in a kind or in a money kind of a thing that need to be invested in that particular thing. So that the purpose is starting from the program until the completion and the taking over of it, the industry will be involved in that one, so that they also know that what type of process that has been happening, and even they can do a course correction in that thing, and they can see the that end point in the things. So this is one thing. And second thing, Dr. Shishendu was clearly mentioning that anything that innovations to be happen, the basic research is the seed for that thing. Actually, the fundamental research is the most important part. So that is how it creates the setup for the innovation things. So that in that perspective, said we have restructured our core research grant into an advanced research grant. So there, what we have now, we have restructured that core research grant into an advanced research grant with a like what to say, duration from 3 years to 5 years, and also we are also making an option the investigator to bring in a collaboration from the industries or any MSCs and all those things, but there will be no funding on that one. The purpose here it is so that they will also learn that what type of thing expectations that industries wanted, or what type of things that they can do it in that things. So some of the programs that is how we are bringing in the collaborations of that either in the direct way or in the indirectly. So we are bringing in that industry component in that thing, industry participation actually. And earlier we had some of the programs which really to translate some of the outcomes of the projects which is supported from the programs. Yeah. Say for example, one of the program called TETRA, that is a Technology Translational Research Award.
Yeah.
So that program actually what it is so the any project that which is funded by government supported funded, which results in patent. So they can go to the any company, or they bring in a company participation, but that participation should be the equal amount what which we have been SCRB has been giving into that things. And we also have one more program called Fund for Industry for fund for involving say industry involvement in research engagement. That is called a FIRE program. So that is also to cater that industrial needs through academic knowledge kind of things. So these are some of the programs that which we have done it, but now we are restructuring it, and maybe in the upcoming years we will have a clear picture on that involvement of the industries and other the public that private partnerships in the things.
Very quick question. Have there been already an outreach for industry or other bodies to come and join ANRF efforts? Not project by project level, but at the program level? It would be an interesting play, because then one would see that you have a much bigger picture and the corpus to partner at.
Yes, actually, there are some philanthropies and some public private partnerships. They are very much interested in some of the programs, and they're showing the interest, like say for EFI and what money, all are showing some interest on some of the programs which we have been formulating. That one, maybe in the future we will have a clear cut things on it.
Thank you. I hand it over back to Prerna for the next.
Well, floor is yours, Devashish. I wanted to first request you to speak through some of your experiences in PPPs. By the way, you have a very interesting background in interesting times. You work on the interface of biology and data and AI and so on. And these are actually very interesting times, because a recent Nobel Prize has been won by somebody from a company. It is usually a and usually it is, which is usually something which most academics would think would naturally go to them, right? But at the same time, you interestingly have experiences also working in IGIB, and now you're the director of ILS. So you've seen I mean, how PPPs may operate in different circumstances, different environments. So I wanted to request you to also comment on those in terms of what are the challenges you have seen, besides also the opportunities, to forward some of these PPPs.
Thank you, BFI. Thank you, Satya, for having me here. And at the outset, I'd like to say PPP model for R&D in biotech is a bad idea. PPP model for R&D in biotech is a bad idea. In the audience, those who do not agree with me, please raise your hands. Oh, few. So many of the people probably agree with me that it's a bad idea. Huh? No, I was trying to see whether you are still awake or gone into the sleep mode. So first of all, I think for me the PPP should be private-public partnership, because so far in my experience I have seen when we make it public-private and the public drives and the private continues to support, it doesn't go too far, because in such a model actually public works as a brake, private works as an accelerator, and this vehicle doesn't move. Not many experiences I have, the few that I have actually got into a problematic area is because how the credit is to be shared based on the PPP model, and in the R&D, which is a long gestation period, I think these kind of trust issues came up. But these are the thing of the past. Today, if I have to start a PPP model, any research project or something, my first choice would be to develop a platform which will be funded heavily by government in terms of the capex, and I will invite private to fund on the opex. That way, my understanding is that the PPP model will move faster. That is one way. The other is that in a research program, if I take money from private to a government, then the money becomes government funded, because that means all the GFR rules, everything has to be then followed. What is my wish list? My wish list is that if I get any funding from private, do I have the freedom to spend the way private would have done? That means mid-course of the program, I can change the way I want. I can recruit people not based on what is the age or what is the qualification they have. Just because that program requires one MBA, I take the MBA, pay them 2 lakh rupees. Such kind of things are very difficult currently in our setup. So how would I get over it? I would like to have a PPP model project in which all the sequencing machine, few crores, let government fund those, because why to spend private money on that? But all the chemical reagents, everything should come from the private money. The manpower, I won't look at whether the person is 35-year-old, 40-year-old, whatever the age or whatever the qualification, that market demand of this person is so and so. For a IT person to have him at ILS, and I will have to pay 2 lakh rupees a month. But there is no way I can pay. So similar is the issue. So in the PPP model, it has to be done. So I think private comes first. They say that this is the area will work, would love to work. Public, that is the government, will say, okay, we are providing you the platform, come and do a research, and together we will do this, so that when the outcome comes, then they will take it to the market. That's my thought process.
Thank you. So I just want to take a few minutes to just pose a few difficult questions and then take it from there. Especially, I think PPPs are at a phase where it's going to be reinvented. The traditional models are probably going to see significant change. And I just want to pose those to you and ask those questions as well. So this question is to both Vinay and Debashish. In recent times, entities like Flagship Pioneering, which is one of the founders of Moderna, for example, and has financed a lot of upcoming innovations, has been saying that they actually don't need academia, to come up with these new daring ideas. It's this traditional idea that academics would bring out the new ideas, and then others would work on it, is being challenged considerably. They may still need academia for other things, for example, the talent that comes in, but not necessarily for originating those ideas, right? And I think it's an interesting idea. And there are also institutions being built, including focused research organizations, which are focused on especially some of those technology ideas. Maybe some of the basic capabilities are built in academic institutions, but the technology ideas will probably be built by more nimble, focused organizations in the future, which are financing it themselves and not necessarily relying on some of this. Is that what I just want to understand your thoughts? Does academia still have unique offerings to bring to the table? Because why would a partnership happen if there's nothing to bring to the table, right? So I'm just asking you a provocative question because I think we need to discuss these things. So this is to you, Vinay, and to Devashish.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that it's coming from Moderna, where the original research in itself is from academia. So
Capabilities, yeah.
capabilities wise, that has ultimately led to whatever they have done. But having said that, it is true if there is a particular place where there is a profit is pretty much, I'm sure there will be investments coming from private sector, and they would actually work towards innovation as well as coming up with a solution. But there are many areas which are neglected. That is where philanthropy and public comes into play, right? Many diseases which are not looked at. Animal diseases can be one of the examples, and many of the other diseases which are not the mainstream, like from the context of developed countries, are not going to be worked on. So it is completely not lost. It's public and philanthropy still play a major role in addressing such kind of issues which are not going to be addressed by the major pharmaceutical companies. And if there is something that comes out, ultimately they will take it up. But there is an area which is not touched upon. So that is one place where still the relevance is absolutely there. The second aspect is talent, right? I mean, that's not a small thing. I mean, it ultimately comes from the training that happens in these public institutions. And the way you look at a problem, how systematically you look at a problem, is something what academics teach us here. And that's something ultimately is used by many private organizations in terms of developing and other things. They have to train them differently, but the basic understanding of how to approach a scientific problem is something that public as well as philanthropic funding happens, and public organizations actually help in. I believe there are specifically with respect to areas which are not mainstream, with respect to, for example, chronic diseases, there is interest. But some of the infectious diseases, there's no interest. So those kind of places where the private organization can actually invest a bit in public organizations and work together, at least those neglected areas can be developed better. So I believe the relevance still is there.
Devashish, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think I told in the first remark that what is the public can offer is, I think, the heavy cost, heavy load instruments, which has a devaluation rate very high. The government should be able to fund that, and private can always use it as much as possible, and then try to monetize from the results from there. So I think that is the first area where I see easily a marriage is possible. OPEX from private, CAPEX from public. And of course, brain is there in both ends. One is looking more fundamental questions, another is looking at more translational. Those people also will align, but CAPEX, OPEX is the area.
Ravna, if I may
Yeah.
quickly add, I know I've not asked, but I think one of the strength to, just to add to the answers which are there, one of the strengths that academic work brings out is the uncovering the science and the concepts behind that science, which is not targeted and hence can be taken time and brought out, which in private, the time limits, the deliverables, and it cannot be as broad as what academia does. And that is a strength which possibly for now cannot be completely replaced, because that uncovering of science, which is giving rise to new technologies, the concepts which were not known in terms of how the scientific hierarchy works within the cellular mechanisms, at the molecular mechanisms, are something that possibly would not have been done if the basic research would not have gone so far. And that would be my
Yeah.
addition to the point.
Just to add, next generation sequencing also came from curiosity and lab work. Same goes for CRISPR-Cas9. Eventually, has become such a big thing. Has actually come out of some curiosity-based driven research at laboratory level. There are many examples of that kind where the curiosity-based research eventually led to such an innovation that it has become like very, very important in the scheme of healthcare itself.
No, I think I appreciate that. The fact that capabilities, talent is something which academia brings to the table. I think the question that people are asking is, do ideas need to originate there in terms of technology ideas and so on and so forth. But anyway, I just want to ask one other question, which is also something very interesting and relevant to the times, which has got to do with funding and financing and so on and so forth. We seem to be entering a time when public financing, charitable financing, how private parties finance is really being churned, right? Mr. Trump has, of course, posed interesting questions to how public research is financed and public institutions are financed. And at the same time, our own institutions also are asking those questions, because I think it was largely assumed that government funding would probably create public goods and social goods which are open to everybody and everybody can leverage it. And increasingly, there's pressure to create private goods out of it in that sense. And this is something which, and ANRF is also talking about 70% financing by private entities. Are we mixing up issues in the sense, why would industry be interested in financing public and social goods, right? And if they want to look at private goods, wouldn't they prefer to just have, perhaps just leverage facilities and so on, as Devashish mentioned, rather than financing those activities? Another provocative question, and which I hear quite a bit. And sometimes I wonder as well, because yesterday I met somebody at a government department and an industry person was asking the same question: can we get money without having to deal with academics? Right? So over to you. All three of you should give your points as well. How is public and charitable financing changing, and how do you expect it to change in the future?
I can answer on the three's behalf as well. Anyway, yes, everybody needs to answer. So I think, as a philanthropy, we are always, thinking of creating public good. And my philanthropy, which I am working with, is the end is, as you rightly said in the beginning, impact. And how we measure the impact will be on the way how skills develop from academic to startup to the company, and how many jobs you create. That is our foundation's mandate: impact through skill development and job creation. Now, why we are working with NRF or any other funding agencies together and things like that? Funding agencies, in a funding agency, what we look at is de-risk of funding, de-risking of funding. Rimnath, that is very important concept. If I as a funder, ANRF as a funder, or I as a funder and BIRAC as a funder look at projects, and he evaluates it, and he said it is worth funding it. I evaluate it, I said it is worth funding it. What happens is, and he funds 50%, I fund 50%, or we fund 70, 25%, whatever. The risk becomes de-risked. So everybody is, because we are risk funders, all three of us are risk funders. So we are funding high risk projects. So the risk is de-risked. Plus, we will have our network, he will have his network, they will have their network, and our reach is more so that we can push things to move forward very quickly. It's a government funding agency. Ultimately, the innovation which comes out needs to be used somewhere, implemented somewhere, or bought by somebody. So I think if all funders work together, that is one of the things which I can assume that as a philanthropist, we would like to de-risk our funding to a level. So we work with other funders, other philanthropies, government funders to see how our investment is best utilized. They will have the network. Our funding goes in that network. We have our network similarly. So I think that is what de-risking and using the maximum possibilities and a wider outreach. That I think we presume, because our foundation, our founder, Dr. Umesh Wadmani, invests 80% of his profit into philanthropy. Philanthropy for public good, job creation, skill development, innovation support. So I think if we de-risk that, it becomes 2 times, 3 times of what initially we invest. That is the idea we do work for. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are. So,
Should
sorry,
I
go ahead. Go ahead.
add to it? Yeah, just to add to what Dr. Mukherjee just said. This shift, Dr. Premnath, which you mentioned, I see this shift is happening in the right direction. And if this evolution would not have happened, that would have been concerning. I think it's an indication that we are on the right track. And any impact, like for example, governments focus on creating social impact, industries focus on creating economic impact. Now what we are looking at, it's a socio-economic impact, and this hand on hand, I think it's a much larger vision and expectation of government to come from industry to come with an equal kind of a shouldering the responsibility. I think it's the right one, and we are in the progress, we are moving in the right direction. It's something I would add. Thanks.
Already they summed up what I actually called.
So I have a quick question. I think we are also coming to all, I think, all stakeholders who are listening in carefully with our inputs for their questions, and I'm sure they will have some more provocative questions than we could come up with. But one quick question I had from the funding component for now, but also from the institutional perspective. If one were to have a quick round of one model, which is something that we do not have it in India, or translational component that has worked outside and we do not have. If I can have a one line from each one of you, one quick line, what is that model that you would believe that we would love to do it? And we should thrive, we should put an effort to do it, because I think there are phenomenal models where the world which has actually done that. Many interesting creative models have been brought in. What are those models? Would love to hear it quickly. If I may start from, I think, Vinay, and then you're thinking I'll start with Devashish then. Devashish.
It will be too controversial if I speak my mind out. Public funded projects, privately monitored.
Very interesting. Where have you seen that?
I think in some of our own RC and all these things, we get experts from the private industry, and when they ask questions, they are of different. And so that kind of.
Very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Vaz.
Like open innovation or a kind of a consortia kind of a thing that would also be helpful in that. But here,
Which model are you citing from global?
kind of a things like European things, they have a consortium kind of a things. So like this, if we have
the EMBL side of
yes,
Okay.
so there's something that which we have it. I think that would be really great, so that we can really tap what type of innovation in particular field that is happening in that thing.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Chendu.
My models change every day. So
What is today's model?
so you can't have a fixed model to see how innovation. It has to be innovation driven models. Some innovation require a very strong hand holding, so you have to have a very iterative model. And I believe, when I present to my board as well, that you can't have a dotted line model that we will have this. So look at innovation, for example, Devashi's Institute, which might require a different, or absolutely we are flexible in funding and anything, but the model has to be very iterative.
Okay.
It will depend upon what, for example, AI Center has a different sort of model we try to implement. Might be different for them.
Correct.
So I think that's what here.
Thank you. Shilpi.
I believe it should be more of early stage collateral free funding and more flexible approach, as Dr. Mukherjee said, because it needs to be customized to every situation. More flexibility around funding rather than those tight jacketed, this kind of a model is something here.
Thank you.
I believe very important things are flexibility in terms of operations and trust in terms of that money is properly used.
Correct.
In India, we tend to have the other way of looking at it.
Yeah.
We put money layers so that things are not misused. But that's not innovative way of working.
And when we're working with multiple stakeholders, we'll need flexibility, agility to actually move faster than that. Thank you so much. Thank you all. We have a couple of minutes for a very quick 2 questions, if there are any from the audience. And I'm sure the discussion has been fantastic. I think I can see Pawan right there. Hi, Pawan. Please, questions from you.
Hello. Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. And I thought I'll, couple of points I will meet very quickly. Because our center has come from philanthropic money from industry. And this actually quite gels very well with the theme of the session. And as Debashish was saying, the CapEx is coming from the university and the OPEX is coming from the charity money. So that is as far as the educational initiative is concerned. We are starting MTech in synthetic biology and biomanufacturing for the first time in India from next week. So that has worked very well. The other part is the research aspect. Now that is also coming from philanthropic, intent that we set up some research initiative. However, initially it looks very fine. However, over time, the money will dry up. And I think, Taslim, I need to learn from you. How do you manage it once there's no money left after a couple of years? So, but initially, yes, it works very well. But we have to find models of sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
By the way, we also need to ask the question if every institution has to be sustainable, self-sustaining, right? I mean, that's also an important question to ask because there's an assumption that every organization has to be sustaining on its own in terms of, because if you do that, you're naturally directing them towards low-hanging fruits, and maybe some institutions you don't want to do that, right? So it's some food for thought.
Anybody wants to add to that before we take any? Do we have another question?
I think one of the recent success story I remember is from IGI with the Feluda that came where Tata Sons and others showed the faith in it.
Yeah.
Only thing is that, okay, when it is a crisis moment, the entire world is, that time that private came forward and did this. But this has to be a norm now. Without crisis also, people should come forward and...
Absolutely. I think more successes, we are going through a kind of a decade of intense partnerships, and more success will bring more trust to actually build that further. If Premnath, if you don't have further questions, shall we quickly wrap up? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Satya has indicated, so we'll close now. So thank you very much. I don't want to belabor the point, but do you have any final?
No, I think I think we have had a great discussion with all panelists, and Premnath, you want to conclude?
Yeah. Thank you very much to all of you. I mean, this is a very important topic, and it needs to be reinvented, in my opinion. So let's hope that we can come up with some new ideas in the near future. Some of the leading financing institutions are here, and BFI is also here. And I think it's a good time to rethink how we do some of these PPPs, and nothing like financing to make it happen. So thank you very much. Over to you, Madhu.
Yeah. Thank you to our panelists, and we further extend our appreciation by presenting them the innovative devices. Would like to once again call upon here on stage Ms. Neha Rastogi of Agastya, the co-founder. And once again, as we express our thanks, gratitude to our panelists, presenting them Agastya, the Easy Touch Plus.
See, now like your feet, I use, I think, I hope this. Nice.
So, a collective thank you to all of them. Let's put our hands together, thanking each one of them. Thank you.